Hi, this is a story about Angel Ho, narrated by Angel Ho. I felt like it would be important to document my life, since times are so uncertain, and I would need to share this information with you directly about someone who has been living with autism their whole life, to being misdiagnosed with schizophrenia, to hearing and having spiritual gifts, to living a life that contradicts the status quo of our narration of reality. I've decided to make this documentary as a way of documenting my life and looking back through a photo series of all my photo shoots and how they recorded pivotal moments in my life. Sorry, that's my mom sneezing in the background. No, mommy, it's fine. Shame she apologized. Bless you. Anyways, this is the beginning of my life, and what has happened so far is that I have created art with the intention of disruption. So I think we'll begin the story leaving high school into my early days as a young performer and creative and individual. I never had the intention of becoming famous. I've never had the intention of being a superstar. Right now, at this point in my life, I'm experimenting with my cultural identity, struggling dramatically with my identity as a person, also being influenced by the people that were my friends at the time, telling me that I wasn't who I was, that I was merely someone who was inferior to them. This didn't bother me or make me think anything of it. I just thought that they were friends. I wasn't really awake at the time, but I just felt like, why not explore my diverse background? Why not create commentary on the complexities and explore the history of identity politics in my art? I had a growing popularity on Tumblr at the time, where I created these digital artworks that were all under the guise of Angel Wave. It was an expression of a utopic honesty of the world and its current standing. I created all these artworks and graphics as a way of rebelling against the status quo and exploring my identity and what it means to me, my queerness, my transness, my masculinity, my femininity. It became really popular, and then I stopped posting on this Tumblr called Internet Mall. It was huge back in the day, and that's how I started becoming the persona of Angel Ho. I created this persona. I started making costume, art, fashion. Even from a young age, I thought a red tie would be fashionable. This was my first time in drag after university. This was in Lilo. I used to DJ for them often. They are a star and a true friend. Love them. This was my first time DJing at an event. It was called Yo, and these were the parties to go to for the youth. This was my first radio interview with Bush Radio and Oscar. I used to steal McDonald's signs and make clothing out of it. This was my first time DJing as well. This was me supporting my friend Callow. This was me DJing again. I think I was about 20, and yeah, I was just interested in all the things that are popular now, still exploring my identity. This was me at a young age. I just thought I'd put that photo in there. So I explored my identity in various ways. Very trendy. This was all in the early 2014. I was really queer, really commenting on all these things about the world and the way we view it. And I kind of just ran with it. I just was so free with my expression and very influenced by the freedoms of Lady Gaga and how she perceived time, space. And this was me at Designing Daba performing. I always had an affinity for fashion, and I thought it was allowing me to be free with my identity, free with my expression, free with my idea of reality. I never cared if it was expensive or affordable. I just wanted the fantasy, and I made it happen. This was such a pivotal moment in my life when I met Gaga. I was so obsessed to the point where I camped outside of the stadium for 3 days, and then I was bribed by a white man. Not bribed, but like actually threatened that he was gonna abandon me, an 18-year-old. If anything were to happen to me, he would not help because I was in a public space. And then I actually just made a deal with him to protect me, so I could see Gaga. I was quite fucked up, but I digress. And then I met her, and that's when the veil broke for me. I was like, it was an anticlimax. I was like, she's just a human, like everyone else, with a weird energy. But yeah, that's when I realized I can also do this. I can be a star. This was a pivotal moment for me in my creative arts vision. I made this artwork called Red Devil, and it was about the Eclipse, the Cape Minstrel bands, and how we chase away evil spirits. This was a story that resonated with me because there was so much pain in my life, and I seek freedom as a superhero, as the Red Devil that leads the procession to chase away evil. And in some ways in my life I have accomplished this. However, the battle is ongoing, and it never ends. And so is life, until one morning we say goodbye and close our eyes. This artwork has I created the trend with the glitter on the face that was shown in, I don't know if it was Valentino, but they showed it like a few years later. But yeah, this is what I created. Here's a snippet of what Valentino created. There was a kind of innocence to me in my early days, a purity that was undefinable. I was exercising at the time and making changes in my life that led me to a high frequency whereby I started dabbling with opening the third eye. I didn't actually know what it meant, and I feel like I prematurely reached out to my ancestors at a time when they were all waiting for me. This moment, I realized the world is not so black and white. This was months after opening my third eye chakra. I was actually going through a lot here, hearing the ancestors. They were trying to get me they were trying to get me to communicate with them, and I was denying it. It was a difficult time because all I could do was stand in reality of quietness, but in my mind there was a turmoil behind these photos. There was a torture that was going on, but I found peace in the pose. The reason why it appeared as schizophrenia, it was such a weird story before I even continued this photo series conversation. A lecturer at university walked past me and said that person has schizophrenia, and I low-key think that it manifested in this way, but I don't understand where that comment came from. But besides that, this is when I opened for MIA, and while I was on stage, I was losing my mind. I was pretending with a facade that everything was okay, but deep down, I was being tortured and sacrificed for someone else's good, which was quite crazy. Just to give context, the music industry is such a toxic place. This is also why I'm documenting my life and choosing to leave it behind. All around this time, I was contacted by a news publication that wanted to sign me to do a photo shoot for Vogue, and I didn't have money at the time, so I asked my friends, can we please turn these images into something very cool for Vogue? We all agreed to do it, and this was also at the time where I was taking medication for my mind. Well, it's all such a blur, I don't even know. I'm wearing Gianni Versace for fucking sake, like, hello. And then they said they no longer wanted to do the shoot for Vogue magazine, and they cut off all communication and left me and my friends in a bit of a debt doing this photo shoot. Well, it's just an energy debt that occurred because they put all their effort into making this happen. And unfortunately, these photos were not submitted, and my friend even did the styling for it. Quite sad. This is the album that changed my life that I've created, called Death Becomes Her. You know, leading up to it, like, things just got worse and worse with my mental health. And then when it came out, people were saying that I was possessed, and that, like, you know, it was an evil album, and they were trying to traject me into a negative space, and that wasn't me. And the minute I denied all of these evilness that people were commenting is when shit really hit the fan with my mental health. That's coming up next. I think around this time is when I went to London. If I showed you my passport photos, you would be so shocked to see that I looked so frail every time I went to London. There's just something so eerie and evil about that place, which is why I'll never go back. But this is when I had my mental breakdown, and I was hearing all these voices all at once, doing a photo shoot yet again, documenting me through the pain. It was traumatic. This was just moments before I was about to experience the psychic spiritual awakening attack. I remember the moment very vividly. It was as if I literally said to myself, everything is okay, everything is fine, because I experienced a bit of anxiety, and then I went into a very peaceful state, and then all of a sudden the voices just kept coming and started to attack me one by one. They just started pouring in, and then they stopped, and then they started happening in increments every few seconds. I don't know if it was that English breakfast that I ate that fucked me up. It could have been poison. This was around the time where I was exploring connectivity and how the experience of having that mental breakdown caused me so much fear. It was all about the third eye chakra exploding and in a state of connectivity with ancestors and how we're all linked. I was inspired to make these millionaire hats using millinery. It was also about protection, and also it was about being so fierce that no one could actually mess with me. And I wanted to explore that at this time. At this time, I was performing in a club, mentally unstable, hearing voices from my ancestors. I was moving through space and time so quickly, being cunty as hell, with the delusion of being a superstar. I wondered to myself, where's the peace? But then I found it on stage. It was a magnificent experience being in the spotlight, performing. This song, I got many cheers for. It was my song called Business. And, you know, I was doing all this as a robot, like as if there was a spirit within me that has not died. Although I had a mental breakdown, I still aimed to fucking thrive. What's wrong? Okay, no swearing, I'm taking that out. So, it was the innate feeling within me to actually thrive beyond my mental condition, that I had hope, and even though I was misdiagnosed with schizophrenia, I knew deep down that I couldn't live by the label, but also that it did not apply to me. It was acute autism, and I've been going through it my entire life. And Yahuwah was still keeping me in beautiful places and creating beautiful things. I was creating places from a knowledge base that I didn't even understand. I was just being free. That fashion and that need to be photographed, that need to perform, was the thing that carried me through my psychosis. I would perform all these characters for freedom and for peace. Oh, how film was such an escape for me. Being a superstar, even looking back, this was the moment I realized I was a star. I remember even diagnosed knowing that I had autism. I mean, not knowing that I had autism, this moment was like every other day. I would go through it almost dizzy from reality, almost overwhelmed by everything, living in a daze where time was kind of fragmented in memory. The way I would recall memory was the way I was living life. And I don't think my ancestors wanted that for me. I even stood on the edge of a building on the skyscraper, like, what the hell? But the community really came through for me. This was a time where I was like more sober-minded and more focused on you know, creating art. I had my own perceptions of myself that defied the beauty. But yes, as before my diagnosis and mental breakdown, I was building a confidence in reality. This was around the time I was living with a family member, and it was quite a struggle. they never understood what was actually wrong with me, and they said, no, you're fine. And I was actually struggling every day, to the point where they would kick me out of their home. And I was separated from my mother for a bit, and that's where I started tapping into deities and angels and guidance, and hearing the cosmos speak about me and speak to me, and hearing what people were speaking of me at my own consent. And these pictures were a result of me needing to create and support my vision. This was also pre-pandemic, and I was literally at the forefront of art. I moved out of my uncle's place with the support of my queer community, because I was about to be homeless, and my uncle literally told me to go and build a shack and live in it. Wow. My community supported me, and I actually got money to go and live on my own, which was quite scary. And there were many more incidents that happened, but I don't want to discuss that. I was on the cover of Exit magazine at this time, and I was taking these portraits, regaining my consciousness, living more present. And the fashion for me was the escape, the fantasy of playing someone else other than myself. Even going back to the identity politics, it felt as if I was everything all at once. I was a supermodel in New York on a skyscraper. I was Grace Jones performing. This is also a time when my friend Thandi and I collaborated on a photo shoot and artwork for National Arts Festival. They actually encouraged me so much to live authentically. As someone with autism, I rarely get out. I rarely see people, but the people I do see make a huge impact on my life, and for that I'm grateful. This was a time this was a time where I was working with a look, and I didn't understand time or my mind. It's like everything was dead until I came to this photo shoot. It was about in the 7-month psychosis. To go back in time, this was a moment where I was working with Atipatra Ruga, and we created several monumental performance art pieces, and I worked with them in studio, helping them with their sculptures as their assistant. I would do many things like make sculptures, make sound art, and also just be a friend. Now, we performed the seance with Pharaoh Benga, and I was the Sangoma, which was quite beautiful, and he was Josephine Baker. We actually had such a ball, and these are some photos from this. Is a moment where I was traveling to Europe every year doing the summer tour. I would perform with icons and legends right now in the ballroom, South African ballroom community, because I believed in them and they believed in me. We journeyed Europe for months and weeks, whereby I would perform these show-stopping shows as a superstar. Yet, at the end of the tour, I would sit with less than $1,000 in my account, being broke, and putting everything into what I love. That's when I realized that maybe music wasn't actually for me, and that thought stayed with me. We performed all over Europe. We were the hottest shit in town. Then I met Shiraz, the alien, who photographed me for a few years, who always understood my angles, such a caring person and a talented photographer. They had such an eye for detail and such an eye for my body that they understood what I wanted and how I wanted to look. They were excellent at photographing and capturing a moment. They made me feel like a superstar, and in fact, every time I worked with them, I felt a sense of healing, a sense of growth, a sense of normalcy, which I was craving so much in a world that was trying to put me down. It was quite interesting looking back on these photos and how I've changed. I literally have never felt prettier in these photos. I love these photos because they make me realize that I was beautiful regardless of my size or shape, and that the art of the fashion photographer and myself was a relationship that will be everlasting. I then moved back in with my mother, which was really great. We created art almost every single day. I got back into music production and started making my own art. This was all during the pandemic, where I was creating art. During the pandemic, I realized that I really needed to get my education in order, so I went back to university. And I, studied, graduated, which was an excellent achievement, I must say. Since my mom also never went to university, but the thing is, I could, so I had to honor that. These are some images of unreleased visuals of my album that I really wanted to put out. It was all about my work as a producer, and this is images from my graduation collection of artworks that I've made. I was really proud of it. It was all to do with mother-daughter relationships, and especially those with queer children, and also to do with dreams. And this was actually the first time I actually made a couple hats that were part of my millinery experience. They were all handmade by me, which is something I'm actually exploring in the future. And this is going to be very exciting. All these artworks represented some part of my life that I was transitioning from, like the mantra of Frankenstein, which was about finding relationships finding a relationship that makes sense for one's life, finding a relationship that loves and cares for one, especially when you're trans. You get alienated quite a lot of the time in relationships, and especially with mental disabilities, it's frowned upon in society, and it's considered in some cultures taboo and some cultures gifts. This picture was me making peace with my childhood, me making peace with my inner child. As the water, it is cleansing. I then started making more collages and more print works about my dreams because I would have such vivid dreams because of my medication. I would pose and fantasize about who I wanted to be since I've regained my consciousness, who I wanted to present myself in the world as. It was a constant, yes, it was very cunty and constant, battle of, do I celebrate myself, and how do I do it without hurting the laws of spirituality and of Yahweh? How do I make peace with my existence? This was a time where I was exploring the diva and the angel hoe that I wanted to be. I felt like an artist, a true artist, creating cover arts that have never been seen with the likes of this world, creating poses that were nostalgic of high fashion magazines, edits on edits of the same image, and excitement of change of scenery. This was by Megan Daniels, photographing me one spontaneous day. I actually lost my phone before the photo shoot, and she comforted me greatly. I still did the photo shoot without my phone. It was something that I just completely forgot, The healing art of being looked at as a trans woman, being acknowledged, took away all my problems and worries. I was acknowledged. I was seen. This was the only photo shoot I did in 2022. I got back into recording myself and taking my own images from my cell phone at the time. This was all on a very bad camera, but I've made these edits as stunning as possible as I could. This is all for my self-titled 80s album Angel Hoe. I would photograph myself and in amazement as I was going back to my roots that I showed earlier on, and how obsessed I was with the selfie. But it was just the upgraded version of Angel Hoe. I then performed at Church Institute in Cape Town CBD, Church Projects, whereby I did a residency of showcasing my work. This photo shoot was so important for me. Akona was the photographer at the time. We played with taxidermy birds, disco balls from a local carpenter that was in the city, and we played with my props that I ordered and purchased for this photo shoot. It was probably one of my favorite photo shoots to date. Just so peaceful and serene, and I have Hussein to thank for that. This was also around the time where I realized that alcohol was a huge problem in my life as a coping mechanism, and I decided to cut loose ties with it. And now we fast forward to today, where I've been making visuals for my latest album, Stain, which is my 7th album. I've never felt more free, playing with drag, being in public, being more content with life, not worrying about the woes and ills and highs and lows, but being present in the creation. The art is not the end product, but it's the journey towards it, whereby I would now become the photographer. I've done so many projects where I'm actually encompassing as a multidisciplinary artist. I would record every aspect of myself, and this is the result of that work. I have been training for this for the last 30 years, and this is the latest Angel Ho.